بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا ويرضاه. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله الناصح الأمين. اللهم صل على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين. ثم أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, we continue going over the tremendous book by the Fadilat Shaykh Al-Allama Shaykh Salih Al-Fawzan Hafidhahullah Ta'ala. The book that is entitled Kitab Aqeedatut Tawheed, the book of the Aqeedah of Tawheed. We reached the chapter that is dealing with Bayan al-Haqiqatu kulli min al-Jahiliyyah wal-Fisq wal-Dalal wal-Riddah aqsamiha wa ahkamiha. The reality, the explanation of the reality of al-Jahiliyyah. 1. 2. Al-Fisq. 3. Al-Dalal. And 4. Al-Riddah. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, we're not going to try to translate these terms, but rather we'll try to explain them as we come to them, so that we'll have a better understanding as to what they are, inshallah ta'ala. The first term is al-Jahiliyyah, and this is a term that we're all pretty much familiar with, as this is one of those terms that has entered into the language and jargon of the Muslims, and they generally know its meaning without translating it per se. Al-Jahiliyyah. Naam. على كل قال الشيخ الفوزان هي الحال التي كانت عليها العرب قبل الإسلام. The Shaykh is speaking in a general sense now, or in a broad sense we should say, and he said that Jahiliyyah, this was the condition and the state of the Arabs before Islam. Before Islam, this was their state. من الجهل بالله ورسله, because they were ignorant about Allah and about His messengers. وشرائع الدين, and they were ignorant about the legislation, the rules and regulations of the religion. ومفاخرة بالأنصاب أو بالأنساب والكبر وتجبر وغير ذلك, and also them vying and being haughty and arrogant as relates to the lineage, and them having arrogance and haughtiness and thinking that they were high and above others and so on and so forth. And other than that, from these traits from the Jahiliyyah, the Shaykh, he said nisbatan ila al-jahl, nisbatan ila al-jahl, that Jahiliyyah is a description, or it is that which is linked to al-jahl, and hence it's called al-Jahiliyyah. And jahl is ignorance. Al-jahl is ignorance. So the Shaykh, he says al-jahl alladhi huwa adamul ilm. It is the type of jahl that is the absence of knowledge. The absence of knowledge. Naam. So Jahiliyyah is speaking about a state wherein there is an absence of knowledge. Wherein there is an absence of knowledge. The Shaykh, he says, أو عدم اتباع العلم. And I want you to highlight this and to write this down. Because ignorance, it could be from the standpoint of not knowing. It could be from the standpoint of not knowing. عدم العلم. Or it can be from the standpoint of not following the knowledge. It could be from the standpoint because one, he does not know the knowledge, or it could be from a standpoint that one, he does not follow the knowledge. Meaning that what? That he knows, but he doesn't follow, he doesn't implement, he doesn't abide. So therefore that will also enter into that which is ignorance. That will also enter into ignorance. وقال شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله تعالى فإن من لم يعلم الحق فهو جاهل جهلا بسيطا. He said, whoever does not know the truth, then he is ignorant with the ignorance that is basit. Basit, meaning it is the ignorance that is light. It is light compared to its opposite. Naam. Or is the ignorance that is simple. Right? A simple ignorance. فإن اعتقد خلافه فهو جاهلا مركبا. But if he believes in the opposite of the truth, then his ignorance is compounded. His ignorance is compounded. I'll give you an example. Shaykh Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala, he brings an example, and others from the ulama, as relates to this. So let's say, for example, if a person were to be asked, how many raka'at are fajr? How many raka'at is salatul fajr? And the person responded and he said, I don't know. I don't know. Then this is jahl basit. Then this is the what do you say? The simple ignorance. He just says, I don't know. This is simple ignorance. Naam. What Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, what he means by if he believes other than the truth, meaning that if you were to ask a person, for example, how many raka'at is fajr? And he will say to you, 4 raka'at. 4 raka'at. Naam. So with jahl murakkab, not only is the person ignorant, but he don't even know he's ignorant. Now, as ulama they explain that when a jahl is murakkab, you find a person is ignorant, but he don't even know he's ignorant. He thinks he knows. He speaks to you with certainty. No, it's 4 rak'ahs. I know for sure. And he is wrong. Because he believes in something that is other than what is actual as relates to that particular issue. And this is why Shaykh al-Islam to me, he said, فَإِنْ اعتقد خلافه فهو جاهل جهلا مركبا. And if he believes in other than, if he believes the opposite of it, then he is ignorant with the ignorance that is compounded. فإن قال خلاف الحق عالما بالحق أو غير عالم. He said, and this is the person, if he speaks other than the truth, whether he knows the truth or he does not know the truth, فهو جاهل أيضا. If a person speaks contrary to the truth, if he knows better and he knows that what he's saying is not true, or if he does not know what the truth is and he doesn't know, then in both cases he's still considered to be ignorant. Let me say that again. The second one, most of us, rather all of us, understand that to enter into the meaning of ignorance, that a person does not know the truth. That a person does not know the truth. Now, so we say this person is ignorant, no doubt. But also, who is ignorant is a person who knows the truth, but he speaks with other than the truth. So this person also is what enters into one who is ignorant. So this person will also be described as being ignorant. فإذا تبين ذلك فالناس قبل بعثة الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم كانوا في جاهلية منسوبة إلى الجهل. He says, so once this has been made clear, then the people prior to the sending of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then they were in a state of jahiliyyah. They were in a state of jahiliyyah, that which is connected to ignorance, to jahl. Because if one were to reflect on the people before the sending of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then they were either from the polytheists or they were from the people of the book, right? But in any event, we understand, as far as the polytheists, they didn't know what the truth was, so they were ignorant, no doubt. But as far as those from the people of the book, even those from amongst them who had ilm, we know by way of revelation that they didn't follow what they knew to be true. They didn't follow what they knew to be true. So likewise, they were still considered what? Jahil. So they were still in a state of jahiliyyah. So we look at it from this standpoint, then we realize that all of the people before the coming of the Prophet ﷺ, then they were in a state of jahiliyyah. They were in a state of jahiliyyah. Shaykh al-Islam, he says, فَإِنْ مَا كَانُوا عَلَيْهِ مِنَ الْأَقْوَالِ وَالْأَعْمَالِ إِنَّمَا أَحْدَثَهُ لَهُمْ جَاهِلٌ. He said, because that which they were upon from speech and actions, verily the one who initiated that for them was what? Was an ignorant one. They were following the ignorant ones. إِنَّمَا يَفْعَلُهُ جَاهِلٌ. That which what they were doing, then it was was ignorance. It was from one who was ignorant. وَكَذَلِكَ كُلُّ مَا يُخَالِفُ مَا جَاءَ بِهِ الْمُرْسَلُونَ. And likewise, everything that is in contradiction to that which the messengers came with. Now, everything that is in contradiction to that which the messengers they came with. So if one came and he said, for example, a Christian, and they said that there was a Trinity, then of course this is in contradiction to that which the messengers came with. This is in contradiction to that which Isa alayhi salatu wassalam himself came with. So no doubt they were what? Jahil. Now, those Yahud who were on something that was contrary to that which was brought to them by the prophets and messengers from Bani Israel, then of course they were upon what? Upon jahl. They were upon ignorance. And this is clear. And with regards to the polytheists, then, no doubt, they were upon ignorance. And accordingly, those who were upon other than that which the messengers were upon, Shaykh al-Islam to me, he says, Min Yahudiyya wa Nasraniyya, from the Jews and from the Christians, فَهُوَ جَاهِلِيَّة, that it is a state of ignorance. It is a state of ignorance. And sometimes you will find the term, the pre-Islamic state of ignorance, or something to that sort. Ala kullin, al-jahiliyyah is that which describes a state of ignorance. A state of ignorance before al-Islam. وَتِلْكَ كَانَتْ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْعَامَّةِ. And this is the general jahiliyyah. I want you to underline that inside of your books. This is the general jahiliyyah. Now, this is that jahiliyyah that is general. This is that jahiliyyah that was across the whole world. So that time frame prior to the sending of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, then you can say that time frame is known as jahiliyyah. Right? That time frame prior to the sending of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, then you can say that time frame is the time of jahiliyyah. That time frame is a time of jahiliyyah. Naam? And that was general across the world. He says, the Shaykh goes on, he says, وَأَمَّا فَأَمَّا بَعْدَ بِعْثَةِ الرَّسُولِ صلى الله عليه وسلم فَقَدْ تَكُونُ فِي مِصْرٍ دُونَ مِصْرٍ. He said, but after the sending of the Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم, after the sending of the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم, فَقَدْ تَكُونُ فِي مِصْرٍ دُونَ مِصْرٍ. Then jahiliyyah, it is possible that it could be true in one city and not another city. Right? It is possible that one town could be said about it in jahiliyyah but not another town. كما هي في دار الكفار, just like in the non-Islamic lands, just like in the Kafir lands, right? Just like in the Kafir lands, it could be described as that, being in Jahiliyyah. Why? Because the occupants and the people inside those lands, they what? They're not Muslim. They're not Muslim. They didn't accept Islam. They don't know about Islam, right? So you will say that they're in Jahiliyyah. وَقَدْ تَكُونُ فِي شَخْصٍ دُونَ شَخْصٍ. And it's possible that it can be true for one person and not another person. It's possible it could be true for one person but not another person. Give an example. The brothers who are Muslim, we can't say about them that they're in Jahiliyyah, right? But they may work with non-Muslims. So his non-Muslim co-worker, is true about him that what? He is in a state of Jahiliyyah. So it could be true for one person and not another person. That makes sense? After the sitting of the Prophet ﷺ, the Jahiliyyah could be used to describe one city but not another city. One person but not another person. The Shaykh, he mentions, he says, كَالرَّجُلْ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَسْلَمْ فَإِنَّهُ فِي جَاهِلِيَّةٍ. Like a person before he accepts Islam, then he is in a state of Jahiliyyah. Like a person before he accepts Islam, then he's in a state of Jahiliyyah. And this is when, or this is the context in which we often hear this term. Like it may be a person may be saying a story, or he might say, "Oh yes, I was in California before," right? But then to make it clear as to the time frame, he'll say, in Jahiliyyah. When I was in Jahiliyyah, I visited California. Nah? Or when I was in Jahiliyyah, I was in the army, and I was in the Navy, and we sailed to these countries, and so on and so forth. Right? But he makes it clear, he said, but in Jahiliyyah. Meaning what? Before he accepted Islam. Before he accepted Islam. Nah? وَإِنْ كَانَ فِي دَارُ الْإِسْلَامِ. And it's a very important point. The Shaykh says, even if that particular individual is in the lands of the Muslims. Because, for example, it may be a worker or a non-Muslim resident living in a Muslim country. So they're in a country which you cannot describe as being a country of Jahiliyyah, right? But they as an individual, they are a Jew or they are a Christian or a Hindu or a Buddhist or whatever, living in a Muslim land. So the term of Jahiliyyah is true for them. So even though they may be in a Muslim land, if they themselves have not accepted Islam, then we still say about them, they're in Jahiliyyah, even though they live in an Islamic state. That makes sense? Yeah. فأما في الزمان المطلق فلا جاهلية بعد مبعث محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said, but with regards to a general characterization of a time period or an era as being an era of Jahiliyyah, then this cannot be applied after the sending of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. After the sending of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, then you can't say about an era or about a time period that is Jahiliyyah. No, Jahiliyyah was before the sending of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. After his sending, then you cannot describe an era or a decade as a decade of Jahiliyyah, an era of Jahiliyyah, a time of Jahiliyyah. No. فإنه لا تزال من أمته طائفة ظاهرين على الحق إلى القيام الساعة. Because there will always be a group and a party from the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam who will be clear and apparent and victorious upon the truth until the hour is established. والجاهلية المقيدة فقد توجد في بعض الديار المسلمين. The Shaykh, he says, but the Jahiliyyah that is restricted, it is possible that it could be found in some of the Muslim lands. The Jahiliyyah that is restricted, is possible it could be found in some of the Muslim lands. So therefore you may have some of the brothers who are born and raised Muslims, but perhaps there was a time frame in their life where they really weren't practicing Islam. You will even hear them using this term and saying, but that was in my days of Jahiliyyah. Right? That was in my days of Jahiliyyah. So I don't want you to understand that it's restricted that it is restricted to just those who accept Islam. It also could be true for those who were born and raised as Muslims, but they weren't practicing of al-Islam. And you find that, right? You find that. Sometimes people, for whatever reason and the like, they may have been astray when they were younger. Born and raised as a Muslim, but they may have been astray. They may have been given to drugs and intoxicants, smoking shisha and chewing on khat and things like this. Or they could have been party animals and going to parties and clubs and discos and whatever the case may be, and having girlfriends and boyfriends and drinking liquor and all this type of stuff. And they do things like this. And then Allah Ta'ala guides them, and they make tawbah, and they start practicing the deen. They start practicing the deen, right? And they may refer back to their early years, as to explain. Sometimes I'm just saying so that you understand maybe the context of how it may come up in conversation. But individual to say, "Oh, you're born and raised Muslim, this and that. You're Muslim all these years, so mashallah, so you should know these things, or have you done this, or have you done that?" And they say, "No, during those times, Allah musta'an, I was in Jahiliyyah. During those times, I really wasn't practicing like that. I wasn't serious about my religion and the like." So they may also use this term, and it's true. It can be true as relates to them. So the Shaykh, he says, وكثير من الأشخاص المسلمين. He said, and there are many of the Muslims, many individuals amongst the Muslims, كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم أربع في أمتي من أمر الجاهلية. The Prophet ﷺ, he described that there are characteristics and things that people do that's from Jahiliyyah. Like the slapping of the face and tearing of the clothes and people dying and things like that. These are from Jahiliyyah. Racism, tribalism, and all these things like this. This is from Jahiliyyah. Now, so it's possible that a Muslim could have in him traits of Jahiliyyah. Because, are there Muslims who are racist? Yes. Are there Muslims who are tribal, have tribalism? Yes. And let me explain the difference. Because see, a racist, it's about race, right? Color, stuff like this. This is how they looking at it, and this is how they judge things, and they take their biases based upon that. But then you have tribalism. Tribalism has nothing to do with color. Nothing to do with color. You're just not from my tribe. You can be the same color, but you're not from my tribe, right? Nationalism has nothing to do with color, because you have people who are indigenous in certain countries, and they run the range of colors, but you're not from my country, so no. All of this is from Jahiliyyah. From Jahiliyyah. Now, and we know this exists. Anyone who tried to interracially marry, you may have run into this. Wallahu musta'an. Right? The father says, "No, why? You're not from the tribe. You're not from these stretch of places or what have you." This is from Jahiliyyah. So it's possible that that exists in the Muslims, but rather it exists in multitudes amongst individuals from the Muslims. A proof of this is as the Prophet ﷺ, he said to Abu Dharr, إِنَّكَ امْرِئٌ فِيكَ جَاهِلِيَّةٌ. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, you are a person who has in you Jahiliyyah. You have Jahiliyyah inside of you. Now, the first hadith that was mentioned about the characteristics, the four things, the four characteristics from Jahiliyyah, that hadith is collected in Muslim, can be found in Muslim. The one Abu Dharr, where the Prophet said, you are a person who has any traits of Jahiliyyah. This is in Sahihain, this is in Bukhaari, Muslim. And other than that, وَنَحْوُ ذَلِكَ, the Shaykh, he says, and other than that, and other than that. And this ends the statement of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. Naam, this is the statement of Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. So Shaykh Fawzan, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, he says, وملخص ذلك أن الجاهلية نسبة إلى الجهل. He says, so as to summarize, in summary, Jahiliyyah is attributed to ignorance. It's a better way to phrase that. What you got with you? With reference to ignorance. Nah. Okay, Jahiliyyah is a reference to ignorance. Naam, is a reference to ignorance. وَهُوَ عَدَمُ الْعِلْمِ, and it is the lack of knowledge. The lack of knowledge. Naam, or like the Shaykh mentioned before, or the lack of following the knowledge. وَأَنَّهَا تَنْقَسِمُ إِلَى قِسْمَيْنِ, and it breaks down into two different types. Al-Jahiliyyah al-Amma, the general Jahiliyyah. The general Jahiliyyah. And that general, that general Jahiliyyah, this existed when? Now, before the sending of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وهي ما كان قبل مبعث الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم ومبعث الرسول محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وقد انتهى ببعثته. That this was the state before the sending of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it ended, this time of general Jahiliyyah, it ended with his sending. As soon as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came, then you could no longer refer to an era or time as being Jahiliyyah, yani meaning that stretched across the whole globe. That stretched across the whole globe. Na'am. The second type is Jahiliyyah Khasa, is a specific Jahiliyyah. Na'am, a specific Jahiliyyah. ببعض الدول, that may exist in some of the countries, or with ba'd al-buldan, or may exist in some of the towns and provinces, or with ba'd al-ashkhas, or may exist in some of the individuals. وَهَذِهِ لَا تَزَالْ بَاقِيَةً, and this it still goes on, it remains. So the second type of Jahiliyyah, that is one that is specific, then this remains to this time. So is it okay to say that a particular country, for example, is in like Jahiliyyah? Right? You can say that there was a country and there was no Muslims there, no one knew nothing about Islam, and so on. We can say the country is Jahiliyyah. Now, or some towns from the towns. There are plenty of towns where this reigns true for, and for some people from the people, there's some people who we can say about them, yes, they're in Jahiliyyah as an individual. That individual is in Jahiliyyah. The Shaykh says, وَبِهَذَا يَتَّضِحُ خَطَأ مَنْ يُعَمِّمُونَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ فِي هَذَا الزَّمَانِ. And in that we see the error in those who generalize Jahiliyyah in the time that we live in right now. فَيَقُولُونَ جَاهِلِيَّةَ هَذَا الْقَرْنِ أو جَاهِلِيَّةَ قَرْنِ الْعِشْرِينَ. They will say that Jahiliyyah, or that this is a generation of Jahiliyyah. Or they will say that the 20th century was a century of Jahiliyyah. This is what they will say. This is a generation of Jahiliyyah. This is a century of Jahiliyyah. The 20th century was that of Jahiliyyah. The Shaykh says, وَمَا شَابَهُ ذَلِكَ, and other than that. And this is what you find, the Qutbiyya, the Takfiriyya, Ikhwan Muslimin, so on and so forth. You find them saying the likes of these statements. This is a time of Jahiliyyah. The world is in Jahiliyyah. This is in Jahiliyyah. Why? What do they intend by that? Because they're making takfir on people. They're hinting towards takfir. This is why they're saying Jahiliyyah. That country is Jahiliyyah. I even heard with my own ears in a recorded lecture from many years ago. Many years ago. From Hamza Yusuf, who described Saudiya as Jahiliyyah. وَعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. In fact, his statement was, it's not Sharia, it's Jahiliyyah. This is what he said. أعوذ بالله. أعوذ بالله. Categorize the whole Muslim country as being what? Jahiliyyah. أعوذ بالله. أعوذ بالله. Anyone who knows the Saudiya knows that what this individual has said is the epitome of falsehood. Is the epitome of falsehood. That Shaykh Fawzan, Hamdulillah Ta'ala, he mentioned, and refuting the takfiris and the people who are given to khuruj and the like, he asked him, he said, what do you want? He said, you want women to cover? In Saudiya, it is the law that the women, they have to cover and dress properly, walillah alhamd. What is it that you want? You want the establishment of the prayer 5 times a day? He said we have in the Saudiya the establishment of the prayer 5 times a day, and of the security forces that enforce that and make sure the stores are closed down and so on and so forth for the establishment of the prayer. Walillahi alhamd. He said, what is it that you want? You want that the rules and the laws and regulations of the judicial system is Sharia. We have Sharia here in Saudiya with hudud and so on and so forth. Walillahi alhamd. What do you want? What is it they're looking for? Refuting these individuals, because the reality is that these people of takfir and these people of khuruj and so on and so forth, they don't want Sharia, they just want to rule. That's the reality. They don't want Sharia, they just utilize it as a platform for their khuruj. And you can look at the Ikhwan Muslimin and see that. When Mubarak, let's go to Egypt, when Mubarak was there in power, they were screaming Sharia, right? We all remember those days. They were screaming Sharia, and their criticism of the government was that it was a lack of implementation of Sharia. That was their criticism, right? We all remember these days. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exposed the Ikhwan Muslimin for the liars that they are. Expose them for the liars that they are. And show their trickery and their deception and their deceit. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He allowed for Mursi to become the ruler of Egypt. And Mursi was from which party? The Ikhwan Muslimin. And for 1 year that he ruled, did he implement Sharia? Or did he act like his predecessors? There was no Sharia, he didn't implement no Sharia. No Sharia was implemented. Which shows that what? It was just a call in his platform, but he had a whole nother agenda. He didn't want Sharia, they just wanted to rule the country. That's it. And this is the way of the takfiri people, this is the way of the people of khuruj. They just want to rule. They'll say Sharia if they think that's what the audience will respond to. They'll say Sharia. But their reality is that what? Is that if they think democracy will work for them, then they'll run with democracy. Like Mursi did. Sahwillah. You see? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exposed the treachery and the lies of these people. Exposed them for the world to see. They can't argue with that. They can't argue. We have seen it. The proof is in the pudding. Ala kulli hal. The Shaykh, he says, so we see the false statement in the people who make it seem like the whole of this century or the whole of this era is one of Jahiliyyah. This is not correct. It's not correct to say that. The Shaykh, he says, but what is correct to say? What is correct to say that Jahiliyyah ببعض أهل الجاهلية بعض أهل هذا القرن, that they are in a state of Jahiliyyah, some of the people of this time, or some of the people of this century, أو غالب أهل هذا القرن, or the majority of the people of this century. That's correct. The person can say that. The majority of the people of this century are in Jahiliyyah, or some of the people of this century they're in Jahiliyyah, or this decade or whatever in Jahiliyyah. This is correct to say. It's okay. But as far as وَأَمَّا تَعْمِيمٌ فَلَا يَصِحُّ وَلَا يَجُوزُ, but as far as to make a general statement and categorizing the whole of the century, the whole of the era, the whole of the people of the era in the century as being in the state of Jahiliyyah, then this is not correct. It's not correct, and it's not permissible to say it. It's not correct, it's not permissible to say it. لأنه ببعثة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم زالت الجاهلية العامة. And this is because with the sinning of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, then the general Jahiliyyah was eradicated. It went away. Now, So this is important to know. This is important to know. That makes sense? And I want the brothers, Yani, for these and the sisters, for these particular points to really take them in and to really understand them well. Because the Shaykh, he's going over these things so that one, we understand the reality of these terms and their proper utilization of these terms, and the two, so we won't fall victim to the people who are in error. We won't fall victim to the people who are in error and who will come with this type of propaganda and so on and so forth. 3, so that we're able to identify the people as to who they are when we hear these statements. So we're able to identify the people who they are when we hear these statements. Because they may be a person from the people or what have you, and they start going and saying stuff to the people. They may catch you in the store, corner you in the produce aisle, and he start talking to you. Yeah, brother, this and that. Sometimes they're very adamant and they're very emotional and so on and so forth, and very persistent and aggressive, some of them, right? So they may catch you and think, grab the ear of this guy, and he start saying stuff, and he start talking about the governments and that's already a red flag. Okay, this guy's crazy. But even maybe before it gets to the point where he comes blatant out like that, they may make statements like this. Brother, we gotta get serious. We're living in a time of Jahiliyyah. We gotta I have identified you already. You're already identified. You don't have to go no further. You have been identified. Now, you've already been identified. Now, gotcha, busted. And so it's important. So all these things is important that we know these terms well. The second term is al-fisq. Al-fisq. We went over this briefly in the previous class. Al-fisq, lughatan fi al-lugha, it means al-khuruj. Al-fisq in the lugha, it means al-khuruj. Al-khuruj. Naam. Wal-khuruj, it means to go out. Khuruj, it means to go out, to leave, to go out and to leave. Naam. Wal-murad bihi shar'an, and in the Sharia, what is intended by it, al-khuruj an ta'atillah. It means to go away from the obedience of Allah. To go away from the obedience of Allah. Now I want you to pay close attention. Close attention. Because khuruj from the obedience of Allah, it could entail, as the Shaykh he mentions, he says, فَهُوَ يَشْمَلُ الْخُرُوجِ كُلِّ. It includes a total exiting from the obedience of Allah, وَالْخُرُوجِ جُزْءِ, and it also entails partially going away from the obedience of Allah, meaning that a person obeys Allah sometimes and not other times. So it can be a complete going away from the obedience of Allah, like for the kuffar, or it can be something partial, like the criminals, like the Muslim criminals. Naam, and inshallah we'll come back to this point. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ba'd. Naam. So the khuruj, it could be a khuruj that is kulli, in totality. فَيُقَالُ لِلْكَافِرِ فَاسِقٌ. It can be in totality. So therefore we will say about the disbeliever that he is a fasiq. He's a fasiq, right? Because fisq, it means what? It means to go away from what? The obedience of Allah. So a kafir is a fasiq, naam, because he goes away from the obedience of Allah in totality. They don't obey Allah at all. So we say about him, fasiq, naam. Wal khuruj al juz'i, and it could be a khuruj that is a partial khuruj. A partial khuruj, because a person he does a crime, فيقال للمؤمن المرتكب الكبيرة من كبائر الذنوب فاسق. So you can also call a believer who embarks upon a major sin from the major sins, you can say about him that he's a what? A fasiq. So a person is an open zani, right? Or zaniya. Person's an open fornicator, a fornicatress. Then we can say about them that what? They're fasiq. From the standpoint that what? Because they're open fornicators. Everyone knows they're fornicators. So we say about them they're fasiq. But that doesn't mean that we're making takfir of them. It doesn't mean we're saying that they're not Muslim. No. So it's important to understand that not every time the word fisq or fasiq is mentioned doesn't mean kufr and kafir. That's very important to know. Because the Khawarij, they will take texts that mention the like of fisq and fasiqun and so on and so forth. Those texts that are talking about the fisq, doing the fisq, is talking about the minor fisq, not the major fisq. Because the major fisq is what? Is to go away from the obedience of Allah in totality. The minor fisq is to partially go away from the obedience of Allah. Okay? They'll come talking about that fisq that is partial and make it seem like it's talking about the one that is in totality. And that's how they be making takfir on the Muslims. And this is why Shaykh Saleh al-Shaykh, he says, the issue is not about bringing a dalil. That's not the issue in totality. The issue is about utilizing that dalil in a proper way. You have to utilize it in a proper way. Naam. But some examples of both types, because it comes in the Qur'an fisq and is referring to the kuffar, and then it comes in the Qur'an fisq and is referring to that which is under kufr. Naam, that fisq that the Muslim could be guilty of. For the fisq, fisqan. So fisq is of two types. The fisq yunqal an millah is a fisq that would take a person out the religion, وهو kufr, and this is disbelief. فسمى الكفار or kafir fasiqan. So a disbeliever could be called a fasiq. He could be called a fasiq because ذكر الله إبليس فقال, Allah Ta'ala, He mentioned Iblis. We don't know Iblis, right? Shaitan. Iblis, the devil, Shaitan. Allah Ta'ala, He says about him, ففسق عن أمر ربه, and he made fisq on the command of his Lord. Speaking about who? Iblis. And Iblis is what? He's a kafir. Iblis is a kafir. Nah? So fisq here in this context, it means what? It means kufr. So the Shaykh, he says, وَكَانَ ذَلِكَ الْفِسْقِ مِنْهُ كُفْرًا. So that fisq that came from Iblis, then it was disbelief. It was kufr. It was kufr. وقال تعالى, Allah Ta'ala, He says, وَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فَسَقُوا, and for those who fasaqu, those who make fisq, فَمَأْوَاهُمْ النَّارِ, then their abode will be the hellfire. وَيُرِيدُ الْكُفَّارِ, and that which is intended by it is what? The kuffar. The kuffar. Naam. وَدَلَّ عَلَى ذَلِكَ قَوْلِهِ, and that which points to this is Allah Ta'ala's statement. That which points to that verily those who make the fisq, their abode will be the hellfire. How we know it's talking about the kuffar is Allah Ta'ala's statement. As Allah Ta'ala goes on and He says, كُلَّمَا أَرَادُوا أَن يُخْرَجُوا مِنْهَا أُعِيدُوا فِيهَا. Every time they want to get out, they get put back in. Every time the kuffar try to escape out the hellfire, they get forcefully plunged back inside the hellfire. وَقِيلَ لَهُمْ, and it said to them, ذُوقُوا عَذَابَ النَّارِ, and it said to them, taste you the punishment of the fire, الَّذِي كُنْتُمْ بِهِ تُكَذِّبُونَ, that punishment of which you used to belie. That punishment that used to belie. You didn't believe in it. So all of this is indicative or indicative that what? That is speaking about the kuffar in this ayah. This ayah can be found in Surah Al-Sajdah, and it's verse 20. And the aforementioned ayah, فَفَسَقَ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهِ, this can be found in Surah Al-Kahf, and it's verse 50. Naam. So these are examples of fisq, and it means what? Major kufr. It means kufr, kafir. Fasiq, kafir. Naam. وَيُسَمَّى مُرْتَكِبِ الْكَبِيرَ مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ فَاسِقًا. And also we call the one who does a major sin from the Muslims, we also call him a fasiq. Naam. A dalil for this is what Allah Ta'ala, He says, وَالَّذِينَ يَرْمُونَ الْمُحْسَنَاتِ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَأْتُوا بِأَرْبَعِ شُهَدَاء فَاجْلِدُوهُمْ 80 جَلْدًا فَاجْلِدُوهُمْ 80 جَلْدًا وَلَا تَقْبَلُوا لَهُمْ شَهَادَةً وَلَا تَقْبَلْ لَهُمْ شَهَادَةً أَبَدًا وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Allah Ta'ala says what means, and those who accuse the Muslim women of committing fornication. I want you to listen to this. Good. Those who accuse the Muslim woman of committing fornication. You have to be very careful in accusing people of committing fornication. Very careful. Now, so Allah Ta'ala says, so those who accuse the Muslim woman or the righteous good woman of committing fornication, but they don't bring 4 witnesses. They accuse them of fornicating, but they don't bring 4 witnesses. Because in order to prove that accusation, you have to have 4 witnesses. And as the Prophet ﷺ said, you have to have 4 witnesses seeing the part entering the part. Now, you have to have 4 people seeing the part entering the part. If you only have 2 or 1 or 3, you don't have 4. And if you don't have 4, Allah Ta'ala, He says, فَاجْلِدُوهُمْ 80 جَلْدًا. You don't have 4 witnesses, Allah Ta'ala, He says, whip them 80 times. Lash them 80 times. Right? You lash them how many times? 80 times. And Allah Ta'ala, He says, وَلَا تَقْبَلُوا لَهُمْ شَهَادَةً أَبَدًا. And never accept their witness again. Not just they lash 80 times, but now this person can never be a witness again. They're not trusted. Ever. Never be a witness again. And Allah Ta'ala, He says that these ones, they are what? وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. And they are fasiqun. They are fasiqun. The ulama, they say that the reason that the accusation of fornication has such a strong level of verification is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love that fahisha, that evil is spread, and that filthy acts are spread. The Sharia comes to stop the spread of these actions, of the lewd and indecent actions. The Sharia comes to stop and to minimize the spread of lewd, indecent acts. This is why you need a strong level of verification before the claim could even be mentioned. Before it can even be mentioned. So even if it would have happened fi'lan, even if it were to actually happen, but only one person saw it himself, right? Then that evil will be restricted to what? To them 3. Only those 3 people. You understand? So basically, that vile act, the news of it ends there. That's it. The neighbor won't know about it. The brothers in the masjid won't know about it. The sisters in the masjid won't know about it. It ends there. It stops. Stops. Because if one of the parties involved mentions it, then they get the head. They get the legal punishment. If one of them comes and says, yes, I did such and such, then they get the legal punishment. But that legal punishment is what? Is a deterrent now. Because now we don't see him got lashed and beat. So, no one else in the village is going to want to do that. No one else in the town is going to want to do that. So it's minimized, you understand? And this is why the rule is the way it is. Because if this wasn't the case and that person seen it, then what people do? They'll start running. Now, I saw with my own eyes. Then they telling everybody. Especially if they feel that they were what? If they were slighted. Especially if they was the one who got cheated on. And so on and so forth. Now they want to tell the world. Now they want to make a website and a blog about it, and so on and so forth. But Islam doesn't allow that. Why? Because it doesn't allow that evil be spread. It doesn't allow that indecent actions be spread. That makes sense? And the ulama, they mention that never has it been a case precedent, for lack of a better term, where a person has gotten the legal punishment due to 4 witnesses witnessing the act. There's never happened. The punishment had come because the people who were involved admitted it. They turned themselves in. Then the punishment was put on them. But as far as the establishment of the claim and then bringing the 4 witnesses, they say there's no case precedent for this. There's no case precedent for this. Because what? Because it's not love that evil be spread. It's not love that fahisha and lewd and indecent things be spread. Now, so when one looks at it and one understands this reality of the Sharia and how Islam forbids the likes of this thing, then this is another proof, not the only proof, but this is another proof from another standpoint which shows that what? That music is haram. Because whether it's country and western, whether it's R&B, whether it's pop, whether it's rock, whether it's hip-hop, whatever, you find mentioned inside of the lyrics all types of vile, despicable, nasty, lewd things. All the lyrics you find. Reggae, forget about it. Right? It's filled with lewdness. The spread of lewdness. Filled with it. So if anyone is confused at any level, add this to the many proofs and evidences which establish that music is haram. Music is haram. Yeah. So this is an example of what? Of the Muslims, that they can be called fasiqun. Fasiqun. But here the fisq is what? Fisq doing a fisq. It's not the fisq that makes a person what? Leave Islam. وقال تعالى, and Allah Ta'ala, He says, فَمَنْ فَرَضَ فِيهِنَّ الْحَجِّ فَلَا رَفَثَ وَلَا فُسُوقَ وَلَا جِدَالَ فِي الْحَجِّ. And whoever has intended to make the Hajj, whoever's going to make the Hajj, then there is no lewdness, and there is no what? No fisq, and there is no argument in Hajj. So this is clearly talking about who? The Muslims. That in Hajj, there's no fisq in Hajj. There's no fisq in Hajj. وقال العلماء في تفسير الفسق هنا هو المعاصي. And the ulama, they say that what is meant by fisq here, then it means sin. It means sin. Because when a person does sin, then he goes what? He goes away from the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Na'am? He goes away from the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the fisq that a person in Hajj he makes, is that fisq kulli or juz'i? Is that fisq in totality, or is it partially? It's partially. So here, this is a fisq that's under, major fisq is under kufr. So here, this fisq is not kufr. It's not kufr. But it's important that we understand the likes of these things so that we understand the text and what is intended by the text and the proper meaning of the text. Because one thing about the Khawarij they don't make this distinction one. They don't make this distinction. They'll take texts that's speaking about minor disbelief and make it seem like it's talking about major disbelief. This is one. Two, the Khawarij, they'll take the texts that are speaking clearly about the kuffar and they try to apply them to the Muslims. This is what you find from the characteristics of the Khawarij, from their many evil, vile, nasty traits. These are some of the ones you find from them. So it's important that we know, we understand these things, so that we're able to, one, believe correctly, and two, safeguard ourselves, and three, be able to identify those people who are upon error, so on and so forth. Now, and then we come to Dalal, which is the third of the fourth, with the last and the fourth being Ridda. لكن نكتفي بهذا القدر, but we're going to suffice ourselves with that which has been mentioned. فنكتفي بهذا القدر, وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.